What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to jump into the wide receiver position for the New York Giants. And more importantly, talk about Dave Gettleman and what it's going to take for Dave to potentially save his job. But before I get started, I want to give a really quick shout out to Vince Rappersardi. I thought he came out with a pretty smart idea. He's a guy that seems to think outside of the box. Thinks he's got a great channel over there over on Big Blue Unbiased. So I want to give him a quick shout out. Saw him tweet this, and then I checked out his video in which he talked about Adam Thielen, the wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. And I don't know if I'm going to talk about him specifically, but I'm going to talk about the idea of trying to improve this wide receiver core and whether I think it's realistic and whether I think it's a good idea. Right now, the New York Giants are completely depleted at the skill positions on this roster. When Saquon Barkley went down, Sterling Shepard, of course, has now had the injury to his foot, and who knows how long he's going to be out. Some people have said probably 3 weeks. Maybe he's back by next week. Who knows? But we all knew the New York Giants receiving core wasn't the best as is. Now you have Barkley go down, who's a great weapon in the passing game, and now you have Shepard going down. Well, going into the year, if you looked at any depth chart, was the New York Giants' #1 wide receiver, even though he may not have been playing like it, and we usually pencil him in for at least 1, if not 2 injuries throughout the course of the year. So this should be no surprise, but we knew this wide receiving core was very thin as is. It was to the point that the New York Giants were only dressing 4 wide receivers on the 53-man roster, which to me, it doesn't make much sense. Now, they had extra tight ends, whatever it may be, but right now, if you look at this wide receiving core, for the New York Giants, we've got Slayton, and to me, Slayton is still an evolving player. He's not a #1 yet. We hope he could get to that point. He's definitely shown flashes. We saw it week 1. You've got Ingram, who can't block, but he's definitely a mismatch. And you got Golden Tate, who's sturdy. He's okay, but he's not a guy that's going to take the top off the defense. He's not a guy that's going to put fear into the hearts, of opposing defenses. And to be honest, we don't have many players like that. And then after that, you look at the rest of the roster. You got C.J. Border, who I think has 100 career receiving yards, 52 of which have come over the first 2 games this year. I think he had 49 yards last year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's 6'1", 181. I mean, is he a guy that you're in love with? And the same can be said for Damian Ratley, although I do believe that Damian Ratley does have some upside. And when I did some research on him when we brought him in, I was moderately impressed with the acquisition for the New York Giants. He's got speed. He's got height. But who knows? So far, he's had 3 targets. He hasn't caught a football. So we'll see who gets that opportunity for the New York Giants. But the question that I have as a New York Giant fan is, if we don't bring anybody in, and if C.J. Border doesn't take that leap, Damian Ratley doesn't take that leap, with all the injuries the New York Giants have, and with the talks of potentially trading away players like Golden Tate and trading away players like Evan Ingram, is that really a fair way to evaluate your quarterback? And maybe you, watching as a fan, may say to yourself, I don't care. If he can't get it done, he can't get it done. I'm not thinking from your perspective. I'm not even thinking from my perspective. I'm thinking from Dave Gettleman's perspective. Dave Gettleman, we all know, is on thin ice. Mara's come out this year and said that basically if we don't see improvement, there's going to be changes. Well, you're not going to change the head coach after 1 year. You're going to change the GM, and Dave Gettleman should know that. He's a smart enough guy to know that, or at least I hope he is. And I try to be fair with Dave Gettleman. I back him up when I feel like he needs to be backed up. I slam him when I feel like he needs to be slammed. He's done some good. He's done some bad. Overall, this offseason, I think Dave Gettleman had a strong offseason. You may disagree. One thing that he didn't really do for his quarterback, though, if we're being honest, he didn't really bring him in a weapon in terms of the wide receiver position. He just didn't. He was banking on the evolution of Slayton, and he was banking on the health of Shepard and Golden Tate. Well, Shepard's gone down. Tate already missed the game, and you're thin at the position after that. And when you look on the open market at the free agents that are still out there, we just, of course, brought in a free agent at the running back position, who I thought was a pretty good pickup with Devontae Freeman, and we'll see if the running back by committee approach works. But when you look at the wide receivers out there, you have the guy we just cut, Corey Coleman, who most of us thought was going to be the 4th wide receiver coming in. But the question you have to ask yourself is, why was he cut? He had a good training camp. Make no mistake about it. Now, some people said it was against the second team, and maybe the Giants felt like he lost a step off that injury. Is it a coincidence that they let Conley and him go, and both of them were coming off season-ending injuries the year before? Maybe the Giants feel like he lost a step, and maybe that's why he hasn't latched on with anybody else. He is a former first-round pick who definitely showed some potential throughout the course of his career. So I'm a bit surprised he hasn't latched on. Then you have to question, is it because of the injury from last year? Maybe he's not quite the same player yet. The other guy out there is Demaryius Thomas. I've heard about this. He had over 400 yards receiving last year with the Jets. Of course, he's a former Pro Bowl receiver back in the days with Eli's brother, and he's got height. But is he a guy that's going to really make a huge difference? I don't think so. Maybe he provides some depth, though, and that's something that the New York Giants certainly could use. So those are some options that the New York Giants could do if they don't want to turn to trading away draft assets. But what you have to ask yourself is this: if you're Dave Gettleman, and I'm not even talking about just saving Dave Gettleman's job, because what I think that the main thing that will save Gettleman's job, outside of winning, of course, will be if Daniel Jones takes a leap. And so far, at least through 2 games, which I expected a slow start. He hasn't. Okay, he hasn't taken that huge leap yet. And Gettleman knows that he's going to have to keep his job if this team's not going to win at least 8 or 9 games, which if you're a rational thinker, we're probably not. When you look at the schedule that we got going forward, you look at the injuries that we've already sustained. So if you're Gettleman, knowing that your job relies on Daniel Jones, are you really going to go out there and trade away Golden Tate and trade away Evan Ingram at the trade deadline? I don't know if that'll be the case. If I'm Dave Gettleman, and I'm not just thinking about my job going forward, I'm thinking about my legacy going forward. It rests on the shoulder of Daniel Jones. And if Daniel Jones doesn't get the job done this year and they move on, Dave Gettleman is a failure. You wasted the 6th overall pick on a quarterback, and he will forever be labeled a failure with the New York Giants. Regardless of what all the haters want to say, if Daniel Jones stays on, even if Gettleman's fired and he goes on to win a Super Bowl, people will always credit Dave Gettleman for bringing in that quarterback. And Dave Gettleman, if you're him and you're thinking about the situation that the New York Giants face right now, wouldn't you try to do everything you can to support the quarterback that you spent the 6th overall pick on? The offensive line is going to take time to gel, but he's going to need wide receivers that create some separation. The way I look at it, the receivers that are currently on this roster, and we'll see if they could step up. We'll see if Slayton could become that number 1 threat. We'll see if Ratley could be good, or Board, or whoever. Maybe Benjamin Victor off the practice squad. I'm looking at the available free agents on the wire. I don't really see anybody that's going to make a huge difference. So you have to ask yourself, and I thought Vince brought up a really good point, would you go out there and potentially look to acquire a player, even though it may not make the most sense in terms of wins and losses, to fairly evaluate your quarterback and find out if he's the guy going forward? Because right now he lacks a true number 1 or 2 option on this roster outside of potentially Slayton. That's just facts. They need another guy, and they definitely need some depth. And even if Shepard comes back, there's no telling when he's going to go down again. There's no telling when Ingram's going to go down again. I think they could use another body here. But the problem is, when you look at the New York Giants draft capital next year, they've got 6 picks. They, of course, gave away 1 pick, and we need as many picks as we could get. I've talked about that in the past. I want to try to bring in picks, not get rid of them. But the thing is, Gettleman knows his job rests on the shoulder of Daniel Jones and is more importantly his legacy. And if Daniel Jones does not improve this year and he regresses or stays the same, Gettleman's going to be without a job, and he's going to be labeled a failed GM forever with the New York Giants. So I think it's a really interesting development right now for the New York Giants and Dave Gettleman about whether or not you would think and consider going out there and try to bring in a wide receiver. I'm not going to give you guys any names because there's so many guys out there. Vince brought up Adam Thielen. I don't know if Adam Thielen's the best guy. He's more of a slot guy. I think we need somebody more on the outside, and I don't know who would potentially be available. But look for the New York Giants to potentially try to make a move to try to show ownership that Daniel Jones is that quarterback and try to give him every opportunity they possibly can if the right deal presents itself. And I don't necessarily know if the New York Giants will be sellers, at least at the skill positions, at the trade deadline. But that's just my take on it. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.